Jack.
I'm Jesse.
I'm Chaz.
Welcome to Sri Lanka. Hang on, let's rewind. This is Elon University. It's pretty, with all its oak trees and bricks and such, and it's busy, just like all college campuses. This is where we call home. It was early winter when Jesse, Chaz, and I found out we were going to Sri Lanka to make a movie about the country's environmental issues. And before we start, we need to be clear on one thing. We're going on a journey. This is about trying to find answers, but it's only a start. We don't pretend that this is the end-all and be-all in Sri Lanka's environmental issues. It's simply what we found. I'm still not really sure if what we found surprised me or not, but it was essentially this. Their issues in this small island nation across the world were not that different from ours. They were just centralized in this one remote place, creating the somewhat claustrophobic epicenter of deforestation, pollution, and extinction. All with a history that should have set them up to be the most environmentally friendly nation on Earth.
Deep in the heartland of Sri Lanka, there sits an ancient city created in one of the most arid regions of the island. Before human life came to Sri Lanka, this area would have seemed barely habitable. There was little water, little arable land for farming. Elephants ruled the land. Yet what humans created was a city and a civilization of majestic feats in advanced technological innovation. And now sits in the shadows, slowly consumed again by the forest. Ruins lie along the routes that made life possible in ancient times. What I think struck me the most was that a couple thousand years ago they had already figured it out. They could move clean, pure water miles and miles without pumps. They could purify large amounts of water without processing plants. They created an entire system to provide and support life that now sits idle, partially still in use, but increasingly forgotten. The ancient tank system of Sri Lanka was one of the most profound developments of the hydraulic civilizations, which largely gets overlooked in Western thought.
Now we are in the humid tropics, and in the humid tropics I do not know of any other system that is more appropriate and successful than ours. And sadly, abandoned really, neglected and abandoned. They are marvels, and those things, I have again mentioned this in the book, they are temples, you see. So the underside of the dome which covers the entrance is inlaid with ceramics. And the sentence there, I can quote it, says that the mathematics underlying these ceramics, whatever that might mean, could not be deciphered till the 19th century.
The history of Sri Lanka is deeply connected and intertwined with the hydraulic civilization of these ancient tank systems. Built originally in 474 BC, you can still see their effects today.
We're about to go on to our fourth take in 3 days.
Fourth day.
I worked as tour guide for 9 years actually.
This is Chatura Arangla, our tour guide through Sri Lanka, the brother-in-law of our teacher, a man who became a close friend.
when I passed my tour guide's exam, we had to talk about a topic and prepare a topic, and my topic was about the elephants of Sri Lanka. With that opportunity, I decided to create eco-friendly trail visit to the park. It was not a park. Minneria was not a park at that time.
He helped create Minneria National Park, an ecotourism site now famous on the island where people can take photos of elephants. The government ended up taking control of the park after he was accused of encroaching on the elephants.
Went on the TV saying such and such a person, such and such a company is making a lot of money by showing these elephants, and the elephants doesn't like it, and they start charging people, and they are going to the villages and destroying their cultivations and so on. What was absolutely nonsense.
It's now a huge source of income for Sri Lanka's government.
I would like to know, after 15 years, after making millions of dollars, what they have done to the elephants and the people live there. You can ask them.
For our first few days in Sri Lanka, Chatura showed us around, got us used to the culture, and taught us about what was to him the most pressing environmental concern in the country: the human-elephant conflict.
In Sri Lanka, there are 21.2 million people and about 3,000 Asian elephants. In 1900, there were 10,000 Asian elephants and only about 3.7 million people. The reality is that Sri Lanka has just less than 16 million acres of land, about the size of West Virginia in the United States, and it's not getting any bigger.
Sri Lanka is a tropical country. It's an island in the Indian Ocean. Because of that, and India, Western Ghats and Sri Lanka is considered as a biodiversity hotspot.
Elephants got used to coming and feeding themselves there, and once they have finished there, they started coming to the private properties.
All of this was caused by an elephant, but the root of the cause is deeper. Elephants here have foraged for food, migrated through, and raised their young on this land for thousands of years, but recently people have begun living in the same areas. This is the fundamental basis of the human-elephant conflict.
The conflict is very simple. It is that there is too many elephants and too many people in Sri Lanka, basically. So today Sri Lanka has the highest human density in Asia, and it has the highest elephant density. Right? Two organisms which require a large extent of land and needs from the natural environment.
They say if the government is serious about it, they can electrify the lines, put them inside. Or he says, otherwise give it to a private sector. This is the head count, protect them, and make money out of them. But if they ever come to a village and damage, pay the damage.
Sri Lanka is known for its elephants, among other things, and they're majestic animals, and you can see them in you can see them in the forest, in the national parks, you can see them at the elephant orphanage, and they're just incredible, but they're under threat because as the human population expands and looks for food and space to live, and they plant crops, the elephants are getting squeezed, and this is a story we hear all over. I mean, not elephants in the US, but other animals too. So the elephants are losing their habitat, and they're encroaching onto villages. So it is an issue. We haven't directly funded that project yet, but we are working with some of the environmental groups here to try to promote their activities and to create a bigger awareness.
We spoke with some villagers and discovered the daytime hangout for the herd that ate the pumpkin patch, rammed the home, and ate the coconut and mango trees. This area is also known as the village trash dump. The plastic and other toxic trash that the elephants are eating will soon accumulate in their digestive systems and will likely kill them.
Do you want
want to take a pan down this alley here? I mean, what's this contributing to?
I mean, you have people yelling at us about
Is this the education
camera
part?
batteries and stuff. That makes sense.
So yeah, what else can we bring back? We can bring back a documentary. We can bring back stories.
We can bring back the confusion of not knowing how you're supposed to respond to a situation like this. Because it's like, it's good and it's bad. Like, people are learning about the elephants, true, and they're seeing elephants and the ideas.
I don't know if they're learning about
you have that awareness factor, but what are we doing by learning about it?
Yeah.
Like, are we getting in the way by learning?
It's pretty amazing. It's a good thing. I mean, it's something they need here because they have a lot of problems. Obviously, they're orphaned, and if they didn't have this place to come to, they'd probably pass away or die. So.
On here, so what do you think about the elephant orphanage in general? What are your perceptions?
Actually, I have a now different kind of perception because in today's newspaper only I read an editorial about this orphanage, and it was not very good.
They have this like procession where they show all the elephants to the public, but other than that, they're free. So it's only between that time that they're really chained up, and it's all of the male ones, like that one, that are in heat. Like if he wasn't chained up, he'd probably be like all over the other one, the female one. And having us being so close, it is really dangerous. But at the same time, like I don't really feel like they're being harsh towards them per se. I know that it is tourism and it is part of the entertainment, but it's better than having them be killed by farmers trying to get them off their land. At least they're doing something to keep them alive and still breeding.
It's hard to find the line, I guess, maybe when is it more tourism than rehabilitation and research? At the Pinnawala Elephant Orphanage, they take in sick, injured, or abandoned elephants and rehabilitate them. They also market it as an ecotourism attraction.
This was started in 1972, right? And the orphan elephants from the wild, there's no place for them to, feed and, keep them in custody. So only the zoo was there. And when the wildlife people, established this and later on handed over to the National Zoological Gardens, the department. And we didn't have a good place for them to, stay and, feed them and to keep them in a good condition and all. So that's why this elephant orphanage was, started.
Why would you rehabilitate an animal without the interest of reintroducing it to the wild?
Yeah, you can't, just introducing them back to the wild before they are rehabilitating. So they have get very much used to the human beings. So if we release them, so because of that interaction, so they might come to the villages and, they might attack.
All of her answers were like, we have to keep them alive because the government wants us to, sort of, and the government's funding us. But I wonder how much money they make off this place.
Tourism in Sri Lanka accounts for the income of approximately $330 million annually.
This is a landmine victim.
Either they would be dead and, dead and gone, or they could be here for people to see them.
What?
I don't know.
Still, we needed to see it from a different perspective. We found this turtle hatchery research center that protects eggs until they hatch, and if turtles in the wild have been injured, they can be brought here to be rehabilitated.
We help this place protect them, this turtle, marine turtle. Okay. Because 1978 this hatchery began and start my grandfather. He's alone helped this animal protect them. Now 32 years normally we help more turtle to release in the sea.
Look, yeah? You see, where people look, yeah? The water's baby turtles, no baby, yeah? Look. My pocket, no baby, yeah? See? Okay? This one, no baby, yeah? Yeah, no baby. Sometimes your pocket one baby, 2 months jail. Sometimes your pocket one baby, 2 months jail. Or pocket ticket. Your pocket ticket. Oh! Hey, your pocket! No! Why the baby in the pocket is a...
Now is more people understand and more better help protect them, this animal. We want more school children come education.
I'm still defining what it means. I'm still trying to figure out what it means to me. And I think after seeing the turtle hatchery and after spending a little bit of time here, it seems like something to be considered ecotourism to me. It has to be able to be sustained into the future in a way that's respectful, and it has to include some sort of education aspect. And I don't know that all of those pieces are present in the places that we visit.
For many people around the world, Sri Lanka means tea. Frequently, it's been the top exporter of the drink, but this also raises questions about environmental practices, just like any agriculture does. What are the pesticides used in growing the tea, and how does the production of the good affect its surrounding environment? The International Labour Organization argues Sri Lanka's government is taking steps to protect the environment and the safety of the employees of the tea estates by restricting the use of some chemicals. Even while we were in the country, the government put through a law that banned certain pesticides. But farmers don't always have the easiest time switching to organic practices. We'd run into a group of grad students from Texas A&M that were staying at their professor's tea plantation nearby, and they invited us up for a visit. Their professor, Dr. Pia, had built this plantation over 12 years on his own, avoiding any collaboration with government or companies. The plantation had recently started operating and had just seen its first month in the green when we came.
Okay, I am Dr. Chandan Abesinghe, the senior lecturer, University of Wayamba. 1.5 inch. Then this cut in organic tea, then we don't apply any chemicals or no any pesticides. It's environmental friendly. Then in organic tea estates, it's not allowed to apply any inorganic fertilizers. Then if we apply some chemicals, then it destroy some farmer-friendly organisms also. It's not good. Then most of the time, then now Sri Lanka, then now we advise to farmers not to apply some chemicals like fertilizers and insecticide or pesticide. Farmers, they reluctant to apply organic fertilizer because they want to earn money very quickly.
It's called Ahimsa, Pia's company,
which translates to non-violence.
It's all organic, unlike much of the tea produced in Sri Lanka. We'd not been to any tea plantations yet, so we weren't really sure what to expect. Maybe what sets them apart, other than the fact that they're a small operation that places heavy emphasis on its environmental business model, is that they aren't making tea for the average consumer. This was nice tea, so it's expensive, but it's strong, meticulously made, the kind you can't find in a Starbucks. And part of the reason for that is their organic farming style.
The day we were there, one of the partners of our class, who we were connected to throughout the trip, was working with local farmers to teach them why inorganic farming practices were bad for their crops and for their health. This organization was Rainforest Rescue International.
Is it difficult to try to convince them to switch over to organic?
Yes, because the tea bushes they are working with, about 20-30 years old. So throughout that period, the plant has been acclimatized to chemicals. So without the chemical fertilizer, they won't give the maximum output. So once they switch into organic practices, definitely there would be a drop in yield. So actually they are scared about that.
It wasn't the same everywhere we went. It was like we had the best of both worlds, because our next stop was a factory that turned tea into a powder sold to Lipton and other worldwide corporations. This was not an organic company, but it was owned by Unilever, and its big focus was safety.
Is there if I film a little bit in here? We're watching a documentary.
He wants to know if it's all right for him to film in here.
No problem.
It would be wrong, though, to say that there weren't elements of environmental practices ingrained into the way that this company did their work. One of the strong focuses they had outside the company was their outreach, and specifically teaching people about environmental issues.
Our objective to impart the knowledge about global warming, about hygiene to the people. We have translated this film of the famous American Vice President. Being in the environment, I think all of you must have seen this film. And that is within our 3-year program for education, so that we take responsible care and people act responsibly in the environment.
Later, state officials denied us any direct interviews. In fact, they asked that we not shoot video in their factory, but allowed still cameras in. We got these images from our walk through their facility.
Yes, now we are all governed by the Tea Research Institute, and they lay out on how we should spray, what we should spray, and the percentage which should be arise in made tea. But we try to minimize the use of herbicides because of the build-up of MSL or maximum residue levels in tea. You get a problem there, so you have to be very careful about it. And because you have the Japanese tea market, even the American tea market, North American, where they're quite conscious of the fact that we should stick to certain MRL levels.
Within a few days of us being in Sri Lanka, we found ourselves caught in a rainstorm. One morning we woke up and it was flooded everywhere. We found out later that the floods killed hundreds of people. It was one of the worst natural disasters of early 2011. But what was weird about it was that it was no longer the rainy season in Sri Lanka. It wasn't the time of year where you would usually see a rainstorm like this. People were trying to figure out why it happened. They weren't expecting it. With no explanation, we just pushed on ahead.
Like I think 20 people or 30 people, there's about 70 or 80 missing. So this is all climate change that we're seeing, and the shocking thing is that, you know, it's just right in our face and it's happening. Now the north of Sri Lanka is underwater at the moment.
We were up there when it happened, yeah. We were in Anuradhapura, and it was, we drove back in the flood, it was crazy. Yeah.
We went over with Rainforest Rescue International. We walked through the mangrove. We learned about it from someone who was very knowledgeable about it, Anuradha, and then we also went with Charith.
Charith, the director at Rainforest Rescue International, brought us to a site where his organization was working. He told us about mangroves, or trees that line the coast of Sri Lanka, and how they were dying due to heavy fishing and tourism. He talked about the indifference to environmental issues around the world.
Yeah, I mean that's what they say is going to happen more and more, is you're going to have these peaks and inconsistencies in weather. When, like for example the monsoon weather pattern here is slowly dissipating. And I mean at the moment this is tourist season. Yeah. And you come to Sri Lanka to enjoy the sun, the surf and the beach, but you can't really do that.
He also explained an idea his father, Rano, had come up with, called analog forestry.
I think that's one of the key components is actually looking at human need and the landowners need, and actually linking it to, or at least linking it to the biodiversity and the natural need in the area. So if you have an area that's prone to flooding, what an engineer would say is go in there and fill it up and raise your land and build your house there. An analog forest or someone with that sort of concept would probably say potentially don't live there, number one. Or secondly, if you're doing that, maybe use something that, you know, either on stilts and something that fits into your environment. So you're adapting to the environment while the environment's adapting to you in a sense.
It was Ronald Senanayake, Chara's father and the founder of RRI, who came up with the concept of analog forestry. In broad terms, it refers to a system of planned and maintained forests that work in community development. It turned out that one of the biggest issues facing these communities was that mangroves weren't being taken care of properly. The destruction of these coastline trees was partly responsible for the amount of damage done by the 2004 tsunami. If they'd been healthier and more prevalent, they could have acted as a natural buffer to the wave. What would you say the environmental impact has been on mangroves over the years?
Yeah, we can see a very high degradation in quantity and quality because most of the mangroves are in the northwestern and southwestern coast. They are being distracted to build hotels and aquaculture farms and road infrastructure. And after tsunami, most of the people, including the scientists, have realized the importance of having mangroves as a natural defense.
People can't dump everywhere. Then they have control process, even in our households as well. And other thing is also many NGOs and also government, they are doing awareness programs with school children, and they consider about the values of the mangrove vegetations, and they're actually doing many education programs about that. Now there's a good trend to protect mangroves, and not only mangroves, actually rainforests.
And just like with any environmental issues, this is a story that starts a long time ago.
Deforestation has become almost an endemic malady in our planet. It didn't start yesterday. Deforestation actually started in real earnest. Deforestation of this planet started with the onset of the colonial adventure. That is when the forests of this planet were really taken off for the first time.
He said it's because of this that people began to cut down trees more, which in turn led to a growth in CO2 in the atmosphere.
But the trigger was before the Industrial Revolution, I believe, right, with the removal of the forests of the planet. The temperature differential between a forested area and an open land is almost 5 degrees. When you take that much forest out, you created a warming event, a massive warming event around the planet.
Ronald argues that over time, the development of forestry departments at universities allowed people to think that any collection of trees was a forest. He says that's wrong.
Totally wrong assumption. Because if you look at a forest in terms of its biodiversity, 1% of the biodiversity of any forest anywhere is comprised of trees. 99% of the biodiversity of any forest is in things other than trees. We did the world a huge disservice. We lost the forest for the trees.
During our travels, we found one more species that was being threatened by human encroachment. This one was the loris.
Loris is a flagship species. We are conserve the loris, we have to conserve the whole biodiversity. That's our target. The major problem is forest fragmentation. So they can't move to the forest to forest. We have to do about their ecology, what's their ecological parameters, what is the environment they like. After that, we can do a conservation program.
Efforts are being made to protect the land that lorises inhabit, which is highly affected by human activity, particularly agriculture.
This is single? Yeah.
There's a paradox in Sri Lanka. On one side, there sits a farmer spraying pesticides. He's likely unaware of the effects these chemicals are having on his body and on the land. Even if he knows about the health effects, he needs to provide for his family. On the other side, there sits Sri Lanka's natural beauty, a sanctuary, an ancient tank. Here, unlike in most of the world, it's not the quantity of the water that matters, it's the quality. When we talked to professors at the University of Peradeniya, they told us about lots of problems stemming from water pollution. And they said that all of these issues have to be addressed together. You can't separate them out one by one.
So in terms of economic proficiency, we are still not yet utilizing 100% of the water that is available for us. So still there are room for development of the water resources in Sri Lanka.
One of the biggest causes of water pollution is the lack of waste management systems, which is a problem seen throughout the developed and developing world. As Sri Lanka grows economically, people have started to consume more goods, plastics, cardboards, whatever. It needs a place to go. Waste systems in Sri Lanka have never been closed-loop systems, meaning trash frequently ends up in backyards or burning on the street. But we met one woman who's dedicated her career to finding a better system for handling waste in Sri Lanka.
My name is Ajanta Pereira. I am an advisor to the Ministry of Environment, but I am also the founder of the National Program on Recycling of Solid Waste. I just could not believe that a country could have anything like this, and they say they are striving for development. So I automatically called the local authority in Colombo and I said, what do you do with your garbage? They said, would you like to see it? So I said, sure. And I went to the landfill, the dump site where they were dumping the garbage. That was Meetharamulla Vellampi. When I went and saw the site, it was full of dirt, smelly, cows, pigs, black leachate, mosquitoes, flies all over the place. And when I saw, with the first glimpse of that site, I really believed that not even hell would be as dirty as the dump site that I saw at Meetharamulla. I went to them, I asked these people, why do you collect these things? I mean, what is the reason? Why do you collect these things? And they said, we sell these things. Can't you find another job? Why do you have to come to the dirtiest place on earth to earn a living? And they gave me an answer which changed my lifestyle. They said it's better than stealing. People who wear ties, people who sit in AC rooms, people who have power, they steal. But those poorest people in the world who have to earn a living by going to the dump site, they understood that stealing is wrong. So for me, they became the people that I could respect.
Because of Ajanta's work, the government's responded to the issue. For the first time, people are starting to recycle, and they're disposing of their trash in a more responsible way. Now, recycling plants are cropping up all around the country. I've studied water issues a lot throughout college, but it's seeing them firsthand that helps you understand the severity. You can't really understand that until you've seen it.
trying to educate my cohorts, trying to educate the people of my age, is like trying to teach an old dog new tricks. Doesn't work. My hope is you guys.
And I believe, as a person who has an experience in this country over the last few years, I want to make sure that what I know, I pass it on to the younger generation, and that it will be sustainable.
We will be holding top positions one day as politicians or managers or factory managers or decision makers. So what we teach them is to incorporate everything, not consider environmental problems in isolation, but to give an integrated approach.
How can we equip ourselves and future generations to respect and care for the only earth we have? To find the answers, we sought out individuals who have already begun taking action in environmental education.
I am very proud today that when I came to Sri Lanka in 1992, there was not much of environmental awareness in this country. But today, you can ask any child and they all know what environment is. And so I am really happy that there is this awareness on environment in the hearts of every person. And that's what I'm continuing to create. I believe we need to have more leadership among the youth today, and that when they talk about the environmental issues and when they become leaders of this country in the future, they will be more careful to do development, taking care of the environment.
We had the opportunity to visit 2 schools in the Penangla area. In both schools, Rainforest Rescue International is moving environmental education beyond theory and into application.
Our school have education. We are not doing practical work. A lot of you we try to practical. We are in lectures and it's about taking for the problem. They will do practical activities. All are very happy with that and everything. They learn practical and everything. Normally I am doing a lot of the activity works. Go to the field, how to measure the trees, how to measure the animal diversity and fish, how to catch the animal like that.
You know, when you teach kids from grade 1, listen, don't throw plastic, this is what happens. In 10 years time, you can just control it. You can, you have a population who knows what happens.
सामान्य विद्यालय අපි රුක් රෝපණ සතිය වගේ දේවල් මේව කරනවා. මුල ඉඳලම මේ විද්‍යාලයේ වනාන්තරයක් වගේ තමයි ආවට තියෙන්නේ. මේ විශේෂ අවස්ථාවලදී රුක් රෝපණය වගේ වැඩසටහන් පාසලේ සිද්ධ වෙනවා. විශේෂ දිනවල.
The Leaders in Environmental Advocacy Forum was a 2-day summit that collected individuals from around the country to speak out and collaborate on some of the most pressing environmental issues in our world today. The event was hosted by Elon University of the United States and the University of Colombo in Sri Lanka.
This forum today represents several years of planning, preparation, and international coordination between the scholars, government officials, NGOs, and academics.
I thought it's a great opportunity for the Periclean scholars to exchange experiences and knowledge with Sri Lankan counterparts and activists and others involved in environment and education sectors in Sri Lanka.
And we Periclean scholars feel we are here because, frankly, the issues that have been discussed over the past 2 days are too important to ignore. The time to address the major environmental issues facing our world, issues such as sustainable development, waste management, and water quality issues, is now.
It really is a fantastic example of young people working together to address a problem, to address an issue that affects people all over the world, whether you're in Sri Lanka or the United States. And what I really liked about this conference is it's not just about talk, but it's about action and coming up with a specific plan for how to deal with environmental challenges.
LEAF in a lot of ways was an exercise in environmental education.
It took learning about these issues to a new level, challenging everyone involved to make environmental awareness part of their everyday life.
You got to do it. You have to be the example with our lives and what we do. And if you're consistent with our words and our actions, and you can demonstrate that, hey, this is what it should be like.
In early 2011, we went to Sri Lanka to ask questions about the environment. We wanted to know the situation there and how it related to us, a few white kids from the US who cared about making the world a cleaner place. What we found is that there are big problems. You have mangroves dying, wildlife conflicting with humans, a lack of definition for the word ecotourism. But there are also people that care, and people that dedicate their lives to these problems. And they wanted to pass their knowledge on to us.
That's what ecologists study of our house. And in this house, we have a living room, and in this living room, there are elephants.
The challenge is this, okay? The biggest challenge for climate change is the fact that we've all got our head in the sand. Okay, I mean, we do not want to see the fact that what we are doing by consumption is what's actually driving climate change.
So, say I'm a random American 25-year-old watching this documentary and just picked it up from a friend or something. What can I do to help environmental issues?
First learn what the issue is. The environmental issues are all around us. Getting confused is not the way to go. You have a certain discipline that you have learned, spend time learning, and see how, in the light of that discipline, you can look at some environmental issue. That makes you not an expert, but that makes you very well educated in that subject. You can speak to that subject with conviction.
No, I'm trying to give you a sensible answer. Well, I think set an example in terms of more efficient and more thrifty consumption of our planet's limited resources and energy.
So you think that the US has set a kind of bad example so far then with the culture of consumption?
Yes, and I think it's not just by the sheer volume of consumption, but it also because of America's soft power. Hollywood and the cultural exports to the rest of the world.
There are challenges in the United States, there are challenges in Sri Lanka, there are challenges everywhere. And as individuals, very simply, we can just get together and share ideas and share perspectives.
We who benefited from the system needs to change to enable everybody to get the benefit.
There's no developing world or developed world, there's the world at this point. And every country which confronts issues needs support from another country. It's very hard to find isolated environmental issues that don't either stem from actions of other countries or will impact other peoples in other countries. There really is, you know, it sounds kind of corny, but it really is a one world issue.
Now, if the same soft power can be used for more thrifty, more sustainable lifestyles, beginning in America, in North America, in the developed world, and then give that message to the rest of the world, I think that's something to look forward to. That's what we need.
I breathe the air that is in Sri Lanka. I drink the water that is in Sri Lanka, and I eat the food that grows in my own land. And so I have a duty to perform for the Sri Lankan people. And that's my future, and that's my vision.
See, I'm a Buddhist, and as the Buddha says, don't accept anything I say, even these words, on faith until you have tested it out for yourself and found it to be true. You do that, you find out if what I'm saying is true, then you make the changes.
Yeah, man. It's your boy Hayes, man. You pouring live from the NY, you already know. Ran it through what it do, man. You know what I mean? It's going down. The T, we in the building, baby. Your boy Hayes, man. Ran it through. Get it.
That's the word. Our documentary is about environmental issues in Sri Lanka. So what we're hoping to do is just, we wanted to ask tourists if you've seen any environmental issues since you've been in Sri Lanka.
Environment, right?
Yeah, so what does the environment in Sri Lanka mean to you?
For Colombo, it's totally getting hot. Like garbage everywhere.
Environmental issues.
Yeah.
Actually, we have to protect them, but there are so many issues such as restrictions of due to lack of adequate amount of forage.
First sight, you get a shock because it's all dirty. All the rivers full of plastics materials and all dirty.
So other one is human-elephant conflicts. Have you heard about that? Yes.
Environment getting changed every day.
We need a voice to that, raise the voice, protect the environment, protect the country, protect the people. So not only the people and also the animals. So we have to think about these issues more than right now.